The emergency sirens of the Galactic Council station pierced through the artificial atmosphere like screams of the dying. Admiral Zexithara of the Altarian fleet pressed her scaled hands against the viewing port, watching as the massive dark shape materialized from hyperspace. The creature that emerged defied all understanding of physics and biology. It stretched across several kilometers, its obsidian hide pulsing with veins of crimson energy that seemed to devour light itself. "By the 7 moons," whispered Commander Veltok, his insectoid compound eyes reflecting terror. "It's the Void Reaper." The name sent chills through every species in the galaxy. For 3 centuries, this ancient entity had carved a path of destruction across star systems. Entire civilizations had been reduced to cosmic dust in its wake. The creature didn't just destroy planets. It consumed them, absorbing their life force and growing stronger with each conquest. No weapon had ever damaged it. No fleet had ever slowed its advance. Zexithara's communication array crackled to life as panicked transmissions flooded in from across the galaxy. The Chronari Empire, masters of quantum warfare, reported their most powerful dreadnoughts had been swept aside like insects. The crystalline Vexani, beings of pure energy, described how the creature had drained entire star systems of their luminosity. Even the ancient progenitors who had seeded life across the galaxy eons ago had fled before its approach. "All civilian vessels are to evacuate immediately," Zexithara commanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her hearts. "Military ships maintain defensive positions. We will buy them time." The Void Reaper moved with terrifying grace, its massive form undulating through space as if swimming through an invisible ocean. Tentacles the size of battleships writhed from its core, each one crackling with energy that could vaporize moons. Its presence seemed to bend reality itself, creating gravitational anomalies that pulled nearby asteroids into its maw. On the observation deck, young Kira Chen pressed her face against the reinforced viewport, her 7-year-old human features unmarked by the terror that gripped the adult aliens around her. Her parents had been stationed here as part of the human diplomatic mission, one of the newest species to join the Galactic Council. Humans were still considered primitive by most standards, their technology centuries behind the advanced civilizations that dominated the galaxy. "Mama, what's that big creature doing?" Kira asked, her voice filled with curiosity rather than fear. Dr. Sarah Chen, a xenobiologist, knelt beside her daughter, struggling to find words that wouldn't terrify the child. It's a very old and lonely creature, sweetheart. It's been traveling through space for a very long time." The Void Reaper's approach triggered every defensive system the station possessed. Energy shields flickered to life, creating a shimmering barrier around the facility. Plasma cannons emerged from hidden compartments, their targeting systems locking onto the massive entity. But those who had faced the creature before knew the futility of resistance. Captain Morden of the Hegemony Guard, a warrior whose people had fought the Reaper 50 years ago, stood rigid with traumatic memory. His homeworld of Kepler Prime had been a paradise, home to 12 billion souls. The Void Reaper had arrived without warning, its presence causing massive tectonic shifts before it even began feeding. Within hours, the planet's core had been drained, leaving behind a hollow shell that cracked apart like an eggshell. "It doesn't just kill," Morden explained to the assembled officers, his voice hollow. "It feeds on life force itself. Every living thing within its influence feels their essence being pulled away. Plants wither instantly. Animals collapse as their life energy is siphoned. Even the planet's electromagnetic field gets consumed." The creature's tentacles reached out, gently caressing the station's outer hull. Where they touched, the metal began to corrode and blacken, as if the very concept of existence was being negated. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically as sections of the station began to lose atmosphere. Kira watched with wide eyes as the massive being pressed against the viewport. This close, she could see that its hide wasn't smooth but covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move. Within its depths, she glimpsed what looked like stars being born and dying in accelerated time. The creature's presence was overwhelming, ancient beyond measure, carrying the weight of eons in its movements. "It's hurt," Kira said suddenly, causing every adult in the vicinity to freeze. "What did you say, little one?" Admiral Zexithara asked, her translator struggling with the human child's simple words. "The creature. It's hurt and scared. Can't you see it in its eyes?" The aliens exchanged glances of confusion and disbelief. The Void Reaper had no visible eyes, no features that resembled anything they understood as a face. Yet the human child spoke with such certainty that some found themselves looking more closely at the ancient entity. Dr. Chen placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Humans had always been known for their unusual empathy, their ability to find emotional connections with even the most alien life forms. But this seemed beyond even human understanding. The station shuddered as the Void Reaper's feeding began in earnest. Power fluctuations caused lights to flicker, and the artificial gravity wavered. Several smaller vessels that had lingered too long were caught in the creature's influence, their hulls beginning to decompose as their life support systems failed. All remaining ships. Emergency jump to hyperspace, Zexathara ordered. Abandon the station. Repeat, abandon the station. But even as evacuation pods launched into space, many eyes remained fixed on the small human child who continued to watch the destroyer of worlds with something that looked suspiciously like compassion. In a galaxy where the Void Reaper represented ultimate terror and inevitable death, little Kira Chen saw something else entirely. As the first evacuation ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them the testimonies of yet another encounter with the galaxy's greatest nightmare, none could have predicted that this meeting would be different from all the others. The presence of one small human child, armed with nothing but innocence and an inexplicable ability to see beyond fear, was about to change the fate of the entire galaxy. The Void Reaper continued its ancient dance of destruction, unaware that for the first time in 3 centuries, someone was looking at it not with terror but with understanding. The evacuation alarm screamed through the corridors as species from across the galaxy fled in terror. Evacuation pods shot away from the dying station like seeds scattered by a dying flower, each one carrying refugees who had witnessed the Void Reaper's terrible approach. The creature's feeding had begun, and already entire sections of the station were going dark as their life force was systematically drained. Admiral Zexathara's command center had become a chaos of flashing warning lights and panicked communications. Her tactical display showed the creature's energy signature expanding, consuming everything in its path with methodical precision. The station's hull groaned under the alien influence, metal supports buckling as the very atomic bonds that held them together began to weaken. Evacuation at 70%, reported Lieutenant Kexmore, his 6 arms working frantically at multiple control panels. Remaining civilian areas are sealed. We need to go now, Admiral. But Zexathara's attention was fixed on a single life sign reading that shouldn't exist. According to sensors, someone was still in Observation Deck 7, the section closest to the creature's current position. That area should have been evacuated first. Yet the readings clearly showed 2 human life forms still present. Dr. Sarah Chen held her daughter tightly as the Observation Deck's emergency systems struggled to maintain life support. The Void Reaper's massive form now filled the entire viewport, its dark surface mere meters away from the reinforced transparent aluminum. Most adults would have been driven to madness by such proximity to the galaxy's ultimate predator. But Kira seemed remarkably calm. "We need to go, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, though she knew the evacuation pods had likely already departed. The corridor behind them was sealed by emergency bulkheads, the station systems prioritizing containment over rescue. "But Mama, it's crying," Kira said, placing her small hand against the viewport. Where her palm touched the surface, the material seemed to resonate, creating tiny ripples that spread outward like water. Sarah looked at the massive creature and saw nothing but destruction and terror. Its tentacles were wrapped around support struts, slowly dissolving them with some unknown energy field. The creature's hide pulsed with absorbed life force, stolen from countless worlds across the galaxy. Yet her daughter saw something else entirely. Through the station's failing communication system, scattered reports filtered in from the few remaining observers. The hegemony's long-range scanners detected massive energy fluctuations within the creature's core, patterns that defied their understanding of physics. The crystalline Vexani reported sensing something they described as profound anguish emanating from the entity. Though their sensors typically only detected pure energy signatures, Captain Morden, whose own evacuation pod was now safely distant from the station, found himself studying the tactical readings with growing confusion. His instruments showed the Void Reaper's typical feeding patterns, but something was different. The creature's consumption rate had slowed significantly. Instead of the voracious devouring that had characterized every previous encounter, it seemed to be hesitating. Back on the observation deck, Kira had begun humming softly, a simple lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The melody seemed to resonate through the dying station's hull, creating harmonic frequencies that the alien creature apparently found familiar. Its massive form shifted slightly, tentacles retracting just enough to reduce the pressure on the station's superstructure. "The child," Admiral Zexathera breathed, watching her sensors in disbelief. "The human child is affecting it somehow." Dr. Chen noticed the change too. The corrosive effect on the viewport had stopped, and the overwhelming sense of despair that had filled the air seemed to be lifting slightly. Her daughter continued humming, completely unaware that her simple act of compassion was creating the first pause in the Void Reaper's feeding cycle in 3 centuries. "Mama, I think it's lonely," Kira said, her breath fogging the viewport as she spoke. "It's been traveling for so long and nobody ever talks to it. They just run away." The observation was so innocent, so fundamentally human, that it took Sarah a moment to process its implications. Every species in the galaxy had responded to the Void Reaper with fear, aggression, or flight. None had ever considered the possibility that the ancient entity might be capable of loneliness or suffering. Through the station's external cameras, they could see the creature's movements becoming less aggressive. Its tentacles, which had been systematically dismantling the station's outer hull, now moved with something approaching gentleness. The energy fields that had been draining the station's power core flickered and dimmed, as if the creature was consciously reducing its influence. Admiral Zexathara's communication officer, a young Altarian named Pexaluna, gasped as new readings appeared on her console. "Admiral, I'm detecting neural activity patterns within the creature. Complex ones. It's trying to communicate." The signals were unlike anything in their databases, operating on frequencies that most species couldn't even perceive. But somehow the simple presence of the human child seemed to be creating a bridge, translating the creature's ancient consciousness into something more understandable. Kira pressed both hands against the viewport now, her 7-year-old face serious with concentration. "It's scared of being alone again," she announced. "It doesn't want to hurt anyone, but it gets so hungry, and when it tries to make friends, everyone runs away." Dr. Chen felt her scientific training warring with maternal instinct. Everything she knew about the Void Reaper suggested it was a mindless force of destruction. Yet her daughter's words carried a conviction that was hard to dismiss. Human empathy had always been their species' greatest strength, allowing them to form bonds with even the most alien life forms they encountered. The station's hull groaned again, but this time it was settling rather than buckling. The creature's feeding had stopped entirely, and its massive form seemed to be withdrawing slightly from the station's superstructure. Through the viewport, they could see patterns of light beginning to form within the creature's dark hide, complex geometric shapes that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. "It's beautiful," Kira whispered, and for a moment Sarah could almost see what her daughter saw. The patterns were indeed beautiful, like constellations being born within the creature's vast form. They spoke of intelligence and artistry, of a mind vast and ancient beyond comprehension. Throughout the galaxy, long-range sensors registered the impossible. The Void Reaper had stopped feeding and was exhibiting completely unprecedented behavior. For the first time in recorded history, the Destroyer of Worlds had encountered something that didn't flee from its presence, and the meeting was creating ripples that would be felt across every inhabited system. Emergency response fleets, already mobilizing to deal with another planetary extinction event, received confused reports of a human child, somehow communicating with the galaxy's greatest nightmare. The implications were staggering, but the evidence was undeniable. The Void Reaper, ancient enemy of all life, had paused its eternal hunger in response to a 7-year-old girl's simple act of compassion. The patterns of light within the Void Reaper's hide grew brighter and more complex, forming intricate mandalas that seemed to tell a story spanning millions of years. Kira watched with fascination as the bioluminescent displays shifted and changed, her young mind somehow processing information that would have overwhelmed the most advanced alien computers. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself documenting everything, her scientific training kicking in despite the impossible circumstances. The creature's energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases, yet they followed patterns that suggested not just intelligence, but emotions on a scale beyond mortal comprehension. "Mama, it's showing me pictures," Kira said softly, her hand still pressed against the viewport. Old pictures from when it was little. Admiral Zexathara's voice crackled through the observation deck's emergency communicator. Dr. Chen, we're monitoring massive energy fluctuations from your position. What's happening down there? My daughter appears to be communicating with the entity, Sarah replied, her voice tight with protective concern. The creature seems to be sharing some kind of memory sequence with her. Through the failing station systems, tactical readings showed something unprecedented. The Void Reaper's destructive energy fields had not just diminished but transformed entirely. Where once there had been the chaotic signatures of consumption and destruction, now there were organized patterns that resembled neural activity on a cosmic scale. Kira's eyes reflected the soft light emanating from the creature as she processed the images flowing into her mind. She saw vast star nurseries where the entity had once played among newborn suns, cosmic gardens where it had tended to developing civilizations with the care of a universal gardener. The memories were ancient beyond measure, from a time when the galaxy was young and the creature was not alone. There were others like it, Kira explained, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic sadness, a whole family of space whales swimming between the stars. They helped baby planets grow and protected little civilizations from bad things in the dark. Dr. Chen's breath caught as she realized the implications. The Void Reaper wasn't a destroyer by nature, but a guardian that had been corrupted by some unimaginable tragedy. The creature's feeding wasn't malicious but desperate, a twisted attempt to recapture the life essence it had once protected. The memory stream continued, showing Kira visions of the creature's family being systematically destroyed by something the child's mind couldn't fully comprehend. Dark entities from beyond the galactic rim, beings of pure entropy that existed only to unmake creation itself. The cosmic guardians had fought bravely, but one by one they had fallen, leaving only the youngest and smallest to face an impossible choice. It ate its family, Kira said, tears streaming down her face. The bad darkness was going to take them away forever, so it ate them to keep them safe inside itself. But it hurt so much that it forgot how to be good. The revelation sent shockwaves through the monitoring stations across the system. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries was revealed to be the last survivor of a species of cosmic protectors, driven mad by grief and carrying the preserved essence of its entire extinct family within its tormented form. Captain Mordoon's voice joined the communication channel from his distant evacuation pod. The energy patterns we detected during our encounters, if the child is correct, those weren't feeding signatures. They were the creature trying to share the burden of its family's preserved consciousness. The Void Reaper's massive form shuddered, and new patterns appeared within its hide. These showed more recent memories, endless centuries of wandering through space, approaching civilizations in desperate hope of finding someone who could understand its pain. But every encounter had ended the same way, with terror and violence and the creature's involuntary consumption of the very life it sought to protect. It doesn't know how to stop, Kira said, her small hand tracing the patterns on the viewport. Every time it tries to make friends, its sadness makes it hungry, and then everyone gets scared and tries to hurt it. So it eats them to make the hurting stop, but that just makes it sadder. Dr. Chen felt her heart breaking as she watched her daughter empathize with a being that had destroyed countless worlds. But she also began to understand something that had escaped every other xenobiologist in the galaxy. The creature's actions weren't predatory but compulsive, driven by a psychological trauma so severe that it had twisted the entity's very nature. The feeding stops when it doesn't feel threatened, Sarah observed, speaking into the communicator. Every previous encounter involved military response, aggressive posturing, but Kira approached it with pure compassion, no fear or hostility. Admiral Zexathara's voice carried a note of desperate hope. Dr. Chen, do you believe your daughter can maintain this connection? The implications for galactic peace are immeasurable. Before Sarah could respond, Kira was speaking again, her voice filled with the innocent wisdom that only children possessed. It wants to give back what it took, but it doesn't remember how. The bad feelings are all tangled up with the good ones, and it's been alone for so long that it forgot how to be happy. The creature's tentacles moved closer to the viewport, their movements gentle and exploratory rather than threatening. Up close, Sarah could see that their surface was covered in microscopic structures that resembled neural networks, as if the entity's entire body was a vast thinking organ dedicated to preserving the memories of extinct civilizations. It's not just carrying its family, Kira continued, her young mind processing concepts that would challenge the greatest philosophers. It has pieces of all the worlds it visited, all the people who tried to understand it before the sadness took over. They're all still alive in there, waiting to come home. The revelation recontextualized every encounter the galaxy had ever had with the Void Reaper. The creature wasn't destroying civilizations, but attempting to preserve them in the only way its traumatized mind could comprehend. Each world it had consumed still existed within its vast consciousness, waiting for the day when it could be safely released. Through the station's external sensors, they detected new energy signatures as the creature began to project holographic images into space around them. These showed not memories but possibilities, potential futures where the preserved civilizations could be restored, and the entity's cosmic family could be released from their tormented existence. But achieving such a miraculous outcome would require something that had been absent from the galaxy for 3 centuries: trust. The Void Reaper had to believe that it could release its carefully guarded burdens without losing them forever to the entropy that had claimed everything else it had ever loved. Kira smiled through her tears as she watched the creature's hopeful projections. It just needs someone to help it remember how to let go, she said. Sometimes when you're carrying something heavy for too long, you forget how to put it down safely. News of the unprecedented encounter spread across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carried by quantum entanglement communication networks that connected every major civilization. In the halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions convened as species representatives struggled to process the impossible reports flooding in from the observation station. The Altarian High Command, whose military might had proved useless against the Void Reaper for generations, found themselves debating whether to trust the word of a 7-year-old human child. Admiral Zexathara's transmission had been clear. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy was not a mindless destroyer, but a traumatized guardian, and only human empathy seemed capable of reaching its ancient consciousness. Preposterous, declared General Thexmar, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically at the assembled War Council. The humans are primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. How could they possess understanding that has eluded our greatest minds for centuries? But the sensor data was undeniable. Every monitoring station within 3 systems had recorded the same phenomenon. The Void Reaper had ceased its destructive feeding pattern for the first time in recorded history. Energy signatures that had remained constant for 300 years had suddenly shifted into configurations that their xenobiologists were frantically trying to interpret. On the crystal world of Vexana, beings of pure energy, who existed as living light within massive geometric structures, held their own emergency conclave. As entities that experienced existence as patterns of consciousness rather than physical form, they were uniquely positioned to understand the Void Reaper's nature. The resonance patterns are unmistakable, sang the Vexani Elder, their voice creating harmonic frequencies that rippled through the crystal chambers. The creature's consciousness carries the preserved essence of multiple species. What we interpreted as predatory consumption was actually desperate preservation. The implications sent shockwaves through their luminous forms. If the child's interpretation was correct, then every world the Void Reaper had supposedly destroyed still existed in some form within the creature's vast consciousness. The greatest tragedy in galactic history might actually be the most elaborate rescue operation ever conceived. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, military fleets that had been mobilizing to face another extinction event found themselves receiving contradictory orders. The Chronari Empire's quantum dreadnoughts, ships capable of folding space-time itself into weapons, were ordered to maintain defensive positions but avoid any aggressive action that might disrupt the unprecedented. Communication. Captain Velnox of the Chronari flagship received a priority transmission from the Imperial Palace itself. The Empress herself has reviewed the sensor data, his communications officer reported. We are to observe only. Any commander who initiates hostilities against the entity, while a human child maintains contact, will face the consequences personally. The decision was not made lightly. The Chronari homeworld had been among the Void Reaper's early victims, its 15 billion inhabitants consumed in a feeding frenzy that had lasted for days. For the Empire to even consider that those souls might still exist, preserved within the creature's cosmic consciousness, represented a fundamental shift in their understanding of loss and hope. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of galactic attention as communication requests flooded in from every major civilization. The observation deck's emergency communicator, designed for simple evacuation coordination, was now handling diplomatic traffic that would normally require the Council's most advanced quantum relay systems. Dr. Chen, this is Chancellor Mortex of the Hegemony Council, came one transmission. Our scientists are prepared to offer any assistance necessary to maintain your daughter's connection with the entity. The potential for recovering our lost worlds justifies any resource expenditure. Similar offers came from across the galaxy. The Insectoid Hive Collective offered to share their Gestalt consciousness techniques. The ancient progenitors, who had remained hidden for millennia, sent cryptic messages hinting at knowledge that might help heal the creature's cosmic trauma. Even the normally isolationist Silicon Alliance offered access to their most advanced processing matrices. But it was the transmission from Earth that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Her mother's voice, transmitted across hundreds of light years, carried all the love and support a grandmother could offer. Tell Kira that Grandma is proud of her, the message said, and remind her of the story I used to tell about the sad whale who carried lost treasures. Sometimes the greatest kindness is helping someone learn to share what they've been carrying alone. Kira had been listening to the communications with fascination, her connection to the Void Reaper allowing her to sense the emotional resonance of each species' response. They're all scared and hopeful at the same time, she observed. Her hand still pressed against the viewport where the creature's massive form pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. The big whale can feel it too, she continued. All the anger and fear from before, but now there's something new. It's like when you've been having a bad dream for a really long time, and then someone turns on the light and you remember that good things exist too. The creature's response to the galactic attention was remarkable. Instead of the aggressive territorial behavior that previous encounters had provoked, it seemed to be drawing energy from the collective hope being focused upon it. The patterns within its hide became more complex and beautiful, forming mandala-like structures that reminded observers of star charts or neural networks. It's trying to show them something, Kira said, her young mind serving as translator for concepts that existed beyond conventional language. All the people it saved are sending messages. They want their families to know they're okay. Admiral Zexthera's voice crackled through the communicator with barely contained excitement. Dr. Chen, we're detecting structured signals emanating from the creature. They appear to be personal identification codes from various extinct civilizations. It's as if the preserved consciousness within the creature are trying to contact their home worlds. Sarah finished, the magnitude of the revelation hitting her. It's not just a rescue scenario, it's a reunion. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, species that had mourned lost colonies and vanished worlds suddenly found themselves receiving messages from beyond death itself. The quantum communication networks designed to handle military and governmental traffic became conduits for the most emotional reunions in galactic history. Families that had grieved for centuries discovered that their loved ones had been preserved within the Void Reaper's cosmic consciousness. Experiencing a form of existence beyond physical death, scientists who had spent lifetimes studying the creature's destructive patterns suddenly realized they had been witnessing the most complex preservation protocol ever conceived. But the emotional weight of such revelations was proving almost too much for the Void Reaper to bear. The creature's massive form shuddered as conflicting impulses warred within its ancient mind. The desire to reunite the preserved consciousnesses with their origins fought against the primal fear of losing them to the entropy that had claimed everything else it had ever loved. It's getting scared again, Kira warned, sensing the creature's emotional state through their mysterious connection. All the feelings are too big. It wants to help, but it doesn't want to be alone again. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether 3 centuries of fear and misunderstanding could be overcome by the simple compassion of a human child and the desperate hope of a traumatized cosmic guardian. The observation deck had become the most important location in the galaxy, a simple viewing chamber where a human child served as translator between cosmic trauma and galactic hope. Kira's small form seemed impossibly fragile against the backdrop of the massive entity that filled the viewport, yet her connection to the Void Reaper had proven stronger than 3 centuries of military might. Dr. Sarah, Chen watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and terror as the child continued her unprecedented communication with the ancient creature. The bioluminescent patterns within the entity's hide had grown so complex that they resembled entire star maps, each constellation of light representing preserved civilizations waiting to be released from their cosmic prison. "It's sharing the hurt feelings," Kira explained, her 7-year-old vocabulary struggling to express concepts that challenged the greatest philosophers. When the bad darkness took its family away, it felt like the whole universe was breaking. So it tried to keep everything safe by holding it inside, but holding too much for too long made it sick. The creature's massive tentacles moved with increasing agitation, creating gravitational eddies that caused the dying station to shudder. Through the quantum communication networks, xenopsychologists from across the galaxy offered their expertise, but none had ever dealt with trauma on such a cosmic scale. The entity's neural patterns suggest a form of cosmic post-traumatic stress, reported Dr. Kexalara, the hegemony's leading expert on interspecies psychology. The preservation instinct has become compulsive, triggered by any perceived threat to the consciousnesses it's protecting. But understanding the problem and solving it were vastly different challenges. The Void Reaper had spent 3 centuries developing coping mechanisms that had become deeply ingrained in its cosmic consciousness. Simply knowing that its actions were driven by trauma rather than malice didn't automatically provide a cure. Kira placed both hands against the viewport, her breath fogging the transparent aluminum as she leaned closer to the creature's massive form. "It wants to let everyone go home," she said softly. "But it's scared that if it opens its heart, the bad darkness might come back and take them away forever." The child's words resonated through the communication networks, reaching species representatives who had never considered that the galaxy's greatest monster might be suffering from fear rather than driven by hunger. The psychological implications were staggering, suggesting that healing rather than destruction might be the key to ending the 3-century reign of terror. "What if we could promise it wouldn't be alone?" Sarah asked gently, kneeling beside her daughter. "What if we could show it that there are other ways to protect people without keeping them trapped?" Kira's eyes lit up with the kind of innocent wisdom that only children possessed. "Like making friends. When you have lots of friends, you can help each other keep safe things safe." The simplicity of the concept belied its revolutionary implications. Instead of trying to defeat or contain the Void Reaper, the galaxy might need to befriend it, offering the traumatized entity the cosmic companionship it had been seeking for centuries. Admiral Zexathara's voice crackled through the communicator with barely contained excitement. "Dr. Chen, we're receiving authorization from the Galactic Council for unprecedented cooperation. Every major civilization is prepared to offer sanctuary protocols for the preserved consciousnesses." The response had been remarkably swift, driven by the desperate hope that lost worlds and vanished peoples might be recoverable. The crystalline Vexani offered to serve as temporary hosts for energy-based consciousnesses. The hegemony provided massive orbital habitats that could accommodate billions of preserved souls. Even the mysterious progenitors emerged from their hidden enclaves to offer advanced resurrection technologies. But the creature's response to these offers was complex and troubling. The patterns within its hide flickered between hope and terror, cosmic intelligence warring with primal trauma. It wanted to trust the galaxy's promises of help, but 3 centuries of loneliness and misunderstanding had taught it that hope was dangerous. "It remembers trying to make friends before," Kira said sadly, interpreting the creature's emotional state. "Every time it tried to share the people it was protecting, everyone got scared and started shooting. So it learned to keep them hidden deep inside where they couldn't be hurt." The historical record supported this interpretation. Every encounter with the Void Reaper had followed the same pattern. The creature's approach triggered defensive responses, which escalated into conflicts that ended with the entity consuming entire civilizations in apparent retaliation. But now they understood that the consumption had been desperate preservation, not malicious destruction. "We need to show it a different pattern," Sarah realized. "Demonstrate that this time will be different from all the others." The solution came from an unexpected source. Captain Morden, whose homeworld had been among the Void Reaper's early victims, transmitted a message that reached directly to the heart of the crisis. "I volunteer to be the first," his voice carried across the quantum networks. "If my people are truly preserved within the creature's consciousness, let them be the first to be released. I will trust the entity with the lives of everyone I've ever loved." The offer represented an extraordinary act of faith. Mordun had spent 50 years believing his entire civilization had been obliterated, carrying the trauma of ultimate loss. Now he was willing to risk that grief all over again on the hope that a human child's interpretation of cosmic empathy might be correct. Kira's face brightened as she sensed the creature's response to this unexpected gesture of trust. It remembers him. His people are right near the surface because it was still learning how to keep everyone safe when it saved them. They've been trying to send messages to him for so long. The creature's massive form began to shift, and for the first time in 3 centuries, the Void Reaper began the delicate process of releasing rather than consuming. Energy patterns that had been flowing inward for generations slowly reversed, creating a controlled ejection sequence that required precision beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Through the viewport, they watched as a small portion of the creature's hide began to glow with intense bioluminescence. The light grew brighter and more focused until it formed a coherent energy matrix that pulsed with familiar quantum signatures. Kepler Prime energy patterns confirmed, reported the monitoring stations, their voices filled with awe. The preserved consciousness of an entire civilization is being safely extracted from the entity's biomatrix. But the process was clearly causing the creature immense distress. Its massive form convulsed with each released consciousness, ancient trauma warring with newfound hope. The entity was literally learning to let go of burdens it had carried for so long that they had become part of its fundamental identity. It hurts to say goodbye, Kira whispered, tears streaming down her face as she shared the creature's emotional pain. But it hurts good, like when you finally get to give someone a present you've been saving for a really long time. The first successful extraction of a preserved civilization from the Void Reaper's cosmic consciousness marked the beginning of what would become known as the Great Reunion, but it also revealed just how difficult the healing process would be for an entity that had spent centuries learning to never let go of anything it sought to protect. The release of Kepler Prime's preserved consciousness created a shockwave that rippled through both the physical and metaphysical dimensions of space. Captain Mordun watched from his evacuation pod as millions of energy signatures erupted from the Void Reaper's hide, each one carrying the quantum pattern of a soul he had thought lost forever. The reunion technology, provided by the Galactic Council, transformed the raw consciousness data into forms that could be safely integrated with new physical matrices. Within hours, beings that had existed for 50 years as pure thought within the creature's cosmic memory were taking their first breaths. In newly constructed bodies, Mordun came a voice through his communication system that made his heart skip with recognition. "My beloved son, is it really you?" His mother's voice, unchanged by the decades of preservation, carried across the void like a song from beyond death itself. The emotional impact was so overwhelming that evacuation pods throughout the system reported their occupants breaking down in tears of joy and disbelief. But for the Void Reaper, each release brought a complex mixture of relief and renewed trauma. Kira could feel the creature's emotional state fluctuating wildly as it struggled to process feelings it had suppressed for centuries. "It's happy and scared at the same time," she explained to her mother, her small hand pressed against the viewport where the entity's massive form continued to pulse with releasing energy. "Happy because the people get to go home, but scared because now there's empty spaces inside where they used to be safe." Dr. Sarah Chen realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, the rehabilitation of a traumatized cosmic entity. The creature wasn't just releasing preserved civilizations. It was learning to trust again, one painful step at a time. The process required delicate coordination between dozens of species, each offering their unique expertise to support both the rescued consciousnesses and the creature itself. The Altarians provided advanced medical facilities for physical reconstruction. The Vexani offered their understanding of consciousness transfer technology. The Hegemony supplied massive, orbital platforms where entire civilizations could be temporarily housed while permanent homes were established. The entity's neural patterns are stabilizing with each successful release, reported Dr. Kexelara, monitoring the creature's psychological state from her research vessel. But we're detecting signs of severe separation anxiety. The preservation instinct is fighting against the trust-building process. Admiral Zexathara coordinated the rescue operations from a safe distance, but her attention remained focused on the observation deck, where a 7-year-old human child continued to serve as the galaxy's most important diplomat. Kira. Can you ask the creature if there's anything we can do to help it feel safer during the releases? Zexathara requested through the communication system. The child tilted her head, listening to frequencies that no adult could perceive. Her connection to the Void Reaper had deepened over the hours, allowing her to sense not just the entity's emotions, but its complex thought processes. It wants to keep some friends close, Kira said finally. Not trapped like before, but staying nearby so it doesn't feel alone. Like a family that lives in the same neighborhood but has their own houses. The concept sparked immediate interest among the rescued civilizations. Rather than dispersing across the galaxy to rebuild their original worlds, many chose to establish new colonies within the same star system, creating a unique multi-species community centered around their cosmic rescuer. Captain Morden, now reunited with his preserved family, found himself serving as an intermediary between the creature and the growing coalition of rescued peoples. We owe it our existence, he declared during an emergency council session. The least we can do is offer it the friendship it has sought for so long. The establishment of the Sanctuary Cluster, a collection of habitable worlds and orbital stations arranged around the creature's preferred resting space, became the galaxy's first successful attempt at interspecies cooperation on a truly massive scale. Billions of beings from dozens of civilizations worked together to create a home where their cosmic protector could finally rest without fear. But the healing process revealed deeper layers of the creature's trauma. As more civilizations were released, the entity began experiencing what xenopsychologists termed cosmic flashbacks, sudden episodes where it would revert to its traumatized state and attempt to reabsorb the consciousnesses it had just freed. The bad dreams are coming back, Kira warned during one such episode, her face pale with shared emotional pain. It's remembering when the dark things came and took its first family away. It's scared the same thing will happen again. These episodes required the combined efforts of every species in the cluster to manage. The Vexani would surround the creature with healing light frequencies, while the hegemony's orbital platforms projected calming energy fields. The rescued civilizations themselves became the most effective therapy, their presence serving as living proof that release didn't mean loss. Dr. Chen found herself documenting the most remarkable psychological recovery in galactic history. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries was slowly learning to experience joy, wonder, and companionship again. Its feeding patterns completely transformed, shifting from the desperate consumption of life force to a gentle symbiosis with the willing planets that chose to orbit within its influence. It's teaching the planets to sing, Kira observed one day, watching as the creature's tentacles gently caressed the surfaces of nearby worlds, not taking their life away but helping them make more life and sharing in the happiness. The transformation was visible even from long-range sensors. The dark, light-devouring entity that had haunted galactic nightmares was becoming something beautiful, its hide now permanently illuminated with the bioluminescent patterns of a healthy cosmic consciousness. The Void Reaper was learning to be a guardian again, but this time with the support and understanding of the civilizations it protected. Yet the greatest challenge still lay ahead. Deep within the creature's consciousness, preserved in its most protected core, lay the remains of its original family, the cosmic entities that had been consumed to save them from complete destruction. Their release would be the ultimate test of the creature's healing, requiring it to confront the original trauma that had shaped 3 centuries of pain. As the Great Reunion continued across dozens of star systems, the galaxy began to understand that healing cosmic trauma required not just individual courage, but collective compassion on a scale that had never been attempted before. And at the center of it all, a human child continued to hold the hand of a creature older than recorded history, proving that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism were simply acts of kindness. The final phase of the creature's healing required the galaxy to prepare for something that had never been attempted: the resurrection of cosmic entities whose essence had been preserved for millions of years. Deep within the Void Reaper's core, wrapped in layers of protective consciousness, lay the quantum patterns of its original family, beings of such immense power and beauty that their very existence had once shaped the formation of star systems. Kira stood at the viewport of a specially constructed observation platform, surrounded by the greatest minds from every civilization in the galaxy. The 7-year-old human child had become the focal point of an unprecedented cooperative effort, her unique connection to the cosmic entity serving as the key to unlocking mysteries that predated recorded history. "They're ready to come home," Kira announced, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic anticipation. "But they're scared too. They've been sleeping for so long that they're not sure how to be awake anymore." The creature itself had grown beyond its previous form, no longer the dark destroyer that had haunted galactic nightmares, but a magnificent being whose bioluminescent hide rivaled the beauty of nebulae. Its massive tentacles moved with graceful purpose, tending to the thriving worlds of the sanctuary cluster, like a cosmic gardener nurturing a universal flower bed. Dr. Sarah Chen, now recognized as the foremost expert on cosmic consciousness, watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and wonder. Over the past months, Kira had served as translator, therapist, and friend to a being whose thoughts operated on scales that challenged the very concept of individual consciousness. "The preparation rituals are complete," reported Admiral Zexthara from the command center of the largest cooperative fleet ever assembled. Ships from every major civilization formed a protective perimeter around the creature, not to contain it but to celebrate and support the most momentous birth in galactic history. The creature's form began to change, its physical structure shifting as it prepared to release the most precious burden it had carried. The patterns within its hide became increasingly complex, forming geometric mandalas that seemed to map the quantum structure of reality itself. Each pulse of light represented the awakening of a consciousness that had slumbered within protective darkness for eons. "It hurts because it's beautiful," Kira whispered, tears streaming down her face as she shared the creature's emotional state. "Like when a butterfly comes out of its cocoon, except the butterfly is made of starlight and the cocoon is made of love." The first entity to emerge manifested as a being of pure radiance, its form shifting between energy and matter in patterns that defied conventional physics. It was smaller than the Void Reaper but carried itself with the same cosmic dignity, its presence immediately causing nearby space to shimmer with gravitational harmonics. "My child," it spoke, its voice resonating through quantum frequencies that reached every conscious being in the system. "How you have grown in our absence. How you have suffered and learned and become more than we ever dreamed possible." The reunion between the cosmic parent and child created emotional resonances that rippled through hyperspace, reaching civilizations across the galaxy. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Void Reaper allowed itself to experience pure joy, its massive form practically glowing with happiness as it was embraced by the family it had sacrificed everything to preserve. One by one, the other cosmic entities emerged from their protected slumber. Each awakening brought new wonders to the galaxy. Gravitational artists who painted with the orbits of planets, quantum poets whose songs could heal the fabric of space-time itself, and cosmic engineers who designed solar systems with the care of master craftsmen. "They're not like the creatures in the stories," Kira observed, watching as the reunited family began to interact with the civilizations of the sanctuary cluster. "They're not scary gods or magic space whales. They're just really big people who love taking care of growing things." The revelation transformed galactic understanding of cosmic evolution. These entities weren't alien overlords or distant deities but gardeners on a universal scale, beings whose purpose was to nurture and protect the development of smaller civilizations. Their temporary destruction and subsequent preservation had left the galaxy without its cosmic caretakers for millions of years. The dark entities that originally threatened them, Dr. Chen realized during one of the family's first public communications, they represented entropy on a cosmic scale, pure destructive force seeking to unmake creation itself. The guardian entities didn't just preserve themselves, they preserved the very concept of nurturing growth in an otherwise hostile universe. The cosmic family's first act upon reunion was to address the civilizations that had supported their child's healing process. Their gratitude was expressed through the spontaneous creation of new star systems, each one perfectly designed to support the species that had shown compassion during their darkest hour. "These are gifts," the eldest entity explained, its words creating visible aurora effects in the surrounding space. "But they are also invitations. The galaxy has learned to care for one of us in our time of need. Now we invite you to join us in caring for the cosmos itself." The offer represented an evolutionary leap for galactic civilization. Instead of simply coexisting in space, The various species could now participate in the active cultivation of cosmic beauty and life. Humans, with their unique empathy and willingness to see beyond fear, were offered a special role as interpreters and mediators between cosmic and mortal consciousness. Kira found herself at the center of this new cosmic community, no longer just a translator, but a bridge between scales of existence that had never successfully communicated before. Her childhood friendship with a traumatized cosmic entity had evolved into something unprecedented. True partnership between human compassion and universal creative force. "We're all gardeners now," she explained to her parents as they watched new worlds taking shape around them. "The big ones help us reach the high branches, and we help them remember what it's like to be small and growing. Everyone gets to help make beautiful things." The transformation was complete. The Void Reaper, once the galaxy's greatest nightmare, had become the cosmic guardian it was always meant to be. Its family had been restored, its trauma healed through the simple but profound act of a human child choosing compassion over fear. But perhaps the greatest miracle was how the galaxy itself had changed. The crisis had forced every major civilization to cooperate on an unprecedented scale, discovering that their combined wisdom and resources could accomplish what none could achieve alone. The threat of cosmic destruction had become the catalyst for cosmic unity. As new stars ignited in the specially created systems, their light carrying the combined hopes of 1 trillion souls, the galaxy began its first true golden age. Not an era of conquest or competition, but of cooperation between species great and small, all working together to nurture the infinite garden of space. And at the heart of it all, a human child played with cosmic entities among fields of newborn stars, proving that the greatest force in the universe would always be the willingness to see beyond fear and choose love instead.